I think I began my artistic journey when I was about 5. I have a very vivid memory of going to my great aunt's backyard as a little girl in Forbes in Western New South Wales, and she had this beautiful gum nut tree, and I used to pick up the gum nuts and take them home, and every time I visited there I'd pick up gum nuts, and I've been picking things up ever since. A couple of years ago I was doing a job where I was travelling across remote and regional Queensland. I was working in schools, I was working with artists and with teachers. I would go into these places, I'd fly in one day, work, fly out the next day. As I was going in, places I'd never been to before, tiny little towns, bigger centres, and I'd go in and I'd look at it with new eyes, but I had a short period of time. So I would go in and just take photos on my phone or with my camera. They would be the impressions of the place. And on my Instagram account, I made up my own tag, patterns of my days, because that's what was happening. These were the patterns of my days. I have been obsessed for quite some time with aerial landscapes. Just the literal patterns, the beautiful colours and shapes and lines within the landscape from a plane. I took thousands of photos from a plane window. Being the person I am and picking everything up as I go along, that included bits of paper. So I kept all my plane tickets and all my baggage labels, and I'd go to the visitor information centre in this little place and I'd get the local map and maybe the local newspaper, and I'm a big reader, read everything, and kept all these bits and pieces, not knowing at that time I was going to do something with it. So I started to create then some mixed media works where, the first layer would be bits of this paper ephemera, bits of plane tickets, bits and pieces of all kinds of things. And I'd layer that onto watercolour paper. Then I'd add layers of tissue paper and ink, and letting the mediums that I was using create the contours of the land. And even though these had detail of the actual place with the ephemera that I was embedding into it, it told the story of the place, but then I built up an aerial landscape of that place or that locality. So within the mixed media works I've created, you can really see the geographical differences between the places just based on the colours that I've used and the textures. So some of the work is literally the patterns of the landscape, the aerial landscapes, but being me in a variety of media, hand-stitched, machine-stitched, drawn, inks, watercolours, paints, all forming the fabric of the landscape and the patterns. So it tells a story. It tells a story of place, of materials, of actual patterns, but it's also about the journey and about what I went through personally as I'm travelling, what I learnt, what I saw. And I spent a lot of time at airports, so some of the work documents just quick observational sketches and things of people, a lot of time being quite introspective. When I had the concept to develop this series of work for an exhibition, you have that concept and you have the ideas, and I had some of the work made, I had the baskets already made. But boy, you travel on another journey in itself, creating the work, the processes you go through, the reflections you make on place. Getting into the tin tacks of what's appropriate, what's suitable, what will work. Going through that whole internal journey, your own internal landscape, working through the difficulties, and it's kind of a lovely metaphorical symbol for travelling to some of these places. I mean, there were times where I flew in a little plane and then drove in a car for a day, and at times where I didn't have a car. I do remember in Barcaldine, I arrived to hire a car and there was no hire cars. There was no taxis. Relying on the kindness of strangers, a complete stranger gave me a lift into town. A lady in the cafe lent me her car to go for a drive. Oh, the beautifulness of country people. A lady at the motel then lent me her car to go to the school where I was at, So, there was those actual journeys and what happened along the way. And then creating the work is my own personal journey of growth. Both of them were about growth and learning, and where you travel as an artist within yourself and within the work you create. A place is a place because of the people. But I often didn't get the opportunity to get to know people because I was there for such a short period of time. So those places where I spent a little bit longer and made connections with local people, they make the essence of a place.
Correct. Yeah. Whenever I see the hashtag I'm writing, I always think hashtag no you're not.
Well, here's another hashtag from Jackie actually this is on our Facebook site. I like this. Jackie says, I find creative YouTube videos distracting. So she's watching YouTubes about creativity.
That's fantastic.
That's brilliant.